I'm going to focus my presentation on the infrastructure we need to cater to our growing population. Specifically, I'm going to advocate for the reinstatement of the integrated transport strategy and then talk through an innovative proposal for a cost-neutral, transit-oriented development and train station at the back of Timberley Park. An email with a copy of these plans is on you. Upper Hutt is growing, and one of the key drivers of how growth will be distributed in the region in the coming years will be the resilience to natural hazards. This is because insurance companies are currently assessing their exposure to natural hazard risk and increasingly refusing cover for properties that are in hazard-prone areas. Our city enjoys a relative resilience, and that means we're likely to experience strong levels of growth in the coming decades, as more people around the region become unable to get or afford insurance, or whose properties are affected by events like we saw last year. We need to plan for this growth now so our problems don't embed and become much harder to fix later, as has happened from decades of underinvestment in our water infrastructure. After water, the most significant infrastructure our residents interact with every day is our local roads. We are starting to see denser developments come online, and this will continue to grow as enabled by your district plan changes. More people living in denser developments will put significant strain on our already congested roads. The Infrastructure Commission released a report last week to monitor our progress against our national infrastructure strategy. It outlines that with limited investment available, we need to make the most of our current asset base, and it plainly shows that motorway widening does not solve congestion. We need to invest in other transport modes. This council currently does not have a coherent plan for how you will do this. The integrated transport strategy was worked on for 1.5 years through the government's Better Off funding, yet our community is now no better off. The integrated transport strategy must be completed and should include a bike network map. Funding must be tagged in this long-term plan to begin to design and build a network of bike lanes on key arterial routes starting year 1. Having designs ready to go is critical to make the most of funding pots when they become available, and we've seen in the past these were very generous funding pots. They may become available again. We also need to look at innovative solutions to more equitable access to our key public transport link, the Hutt Valley train line. This line is the most well used in the region, and a significant number of our residents use it as their primary means of transport to work. However, 15,000 people live north of the last train station on the line, the Upper Hutt station. Many of these people need to drive from their homes to the middle of town to access the train station to get groceries or to go to school. This third of Upper Hutt with the worst access to high quality public transport is the third of Upper Hutt who needs the most support to reduce their living costs and make their lives easier. Today, I'm presenting a development proposal for a transit-oriented development in Timberley Park. This could fund a new train station. It means we could have improved access to public transport for our residents most in need, with no increase to local or regional council rates. Last Friday, I spoke to Minister for Infrastructure and Housing, the Honourable Chris Bishop, and I presented this plan to him. He was really interested to hear about how it could boost housing growth, reduce congestion, and allow more young people to get to school independently. So this is the development proposal that I've sent to you. Hopefully you have it up. So it could consist of, this is Timberley Park. It could consist of 50 to 70 houses, 3 shops in a suburb that currently has none. It would retain the most important parts of the park for the residents, like the basketball court, and utilise the underutilised parts at the side and the rear. It would create a more vibrant, safe place for our young people to hang out, and also allow people to get a bottle of milk without having to cross the highway. There are various options for how the station could be incorporated into the existing PT network, and I'm happy to talk these through during questions. From the discussion with Minister Bishop and the ones I've had with Greater Wellington Regional Council, I've got a rough project plan in mind for how this could get done. It involves entering into an MOU with Greater Wellington regarding the transfer of costs for the station, and then negotiating funding for the electrification of the line and possibly another station in Clouston Park and a city deal with the government. In summary, we need to collectively learn from the water crisis and not keep repeating the same mistakes. Planning ahead for infrastructure is critical, and we need innovative solutions that make the most use of our existing asset base. I'm happy to take some questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for coming to speak to us. Is it true that by the best way to ease congestion on motorways and roads is actually by investing in alternatives so less people use the roads?
Yeah, so as I said, there's an infrastructure commission report that came out and it talks about decades and decades of research all world over that shows that widening roads does not work. It gave examples of Auckland, where they're continually invested in road widening or more lane kilometres, and the time travel gets worse. And it takes 2 to 8 years on average for that to happen. But I saw your council's GPS submission that proposed widening of the motorway from Brownell to Silverstream, and that would cost a lot of money and wouldn't solve your problems. But proposals like this, where you increase your capacity on the public transport, would induce demand. Yeah.
Councillor Kerr?
Have you had much discussion with Greater Wellington in this one, and what's their, I guess, thoughts?
Yeah, so I have had discussions with officers as well as councillors, and including the chair, Transport Chair, Thomas Nash. They have, their primary concern is that they have other priorities, and that's in particular for basic maintenance that's not being met at the moment. If we were to bring them a proposal where we could raise revenue from the sale of part of that park for the station, my understanding is they'd be willing to look at that much earlier than they might have otherwise. And there are some other considerations to do with whether or not it would be electrified, whether it would be on the Wairarapa line or the Upper Hutt line. So there's multiple ways that you could do it. There's almost tiers of level of service. So the best case scenario would be that being on the Upper Hutt line, having one in Timberley and one in Clouston Park, say in Montgomery Crest. And then you could have like a park and ride in, like a decent sized park and ride in Montgomery Crest as well. And that would service Telstra Park, walking and cycling distance too.
Councillor Swales?
Thank you for coming along and doing. So had you thought of presenting this to when the submissions were open for the Wellington Regional Leaders Forum?
No, I have not.
Only because they're looking at things at a regional level. And have you broached, I know that you've Adrian Staples, I'm assuming, is the one that you've spoken to about the regional transport. Okay.
I have talked to the team doing the regional growth, the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee and Secretariat work, and I've mentioned it to them.
But you didn't submit anything when the submissions were open?
No.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kerr?
What are your thoughts on the integrated transport strategy? Should be doing there.
I think the integrated strategy work was really good, was moving in a really useful direction. I think it had been, as far as I know, I know it wasn't finished, but I know a lot of work had gone into it, and I know that a lot of people like myself and other advocates had been involved and spent our time on it. I think you, as a council, if you don't have a strategy for how to prioritise your investments, you will just ad hoc make investments that don't overall achieve your goals. which is what I can see in your infrastructure strategy with the long-term plan. There are isolated projects and they are not tagged to an overarching goal that is going to help with the things that you most should be worried about, like, affordability, climate change, congestion. And that means that you are then spending public money on things that are not solving your problems.
Councillor Gordon.
Thanks. Just a clarification point. So you're talking about park in Timberley,
Mhm.
selling the park,
No,
giving some of the money from that park sale to Wellington Regional to fund their public.
so it would be, I would suggest you would go out for an expression of interest with developers to develop part of the park, and you would retain a significant portion of the park for recreation use. And the developer would own the land for the housing, and they would build the roading and parking and vest that back to council. And the proceeds from that would then be given to Greater Wellington to fund. And then it doesn't necessarily need to be electrified because it could be on the Wairarapa line, but it would have much better level of service than on the Upper Hutt line, which means that then, as a council, I would suggest you approach the government, who, as I said, ready, and say, we are planning this, could we have funding for the electrification, because it's 3 kilometres from Upper Hutt to Timberley Park. It's not a really significant distance. You could then also consider whether you want to go as far as Mayborn and include Mayborn on Upper Hutt, as soon as there's going to be development there.
Okay, no other questions? Sorry?
What are your views on the rates increases?
I think the rates increases are a result of decades of underinvestment in our water infrastructure. I think they are inevitable, but I think they're really unfortunate, and I think that people are really struggling. And I've seen that you've also tried to cut other services, and it's really disappointing that decades of underinvestment in our basic services has resulted to the point where we have to cut basic, community facility options and things like that. So I think, it's a really, there are factors that are obviously outside of council's control, but I think this council in particular has underinvested in infrastructure for decades.
Thank you. Thank you. One more.
Have you approached the Timberley Residents Association about these plans?
I have, I was meant to go and talk to them the last meeting, but I missed their last meeting, but I will go and talk to them in this one. I understand I think there's a couple of people in that association, but I think they should definitely be involved. And I also think council, if you take on this project, would need to meaningfully engage with them.
But the people who look after the governance of the community centre there, those buildings, as the Timberley Community Centre Trust Board,
Oh, right.
which I'm the treasurer.
Cool.
And I suggest you talk to them. They have an annual AGM on the 23rd of June.
Okay. Could you let me know if I email how to, thank you. I think also it'd be really useful to involve, for example, the school board. I know the school board leaders, and they see, for example, a train station would be really useful for them to help their kids get to swimming lessons, because it's really hard for them to afford the bus at Te Ho'okere school. So I think definitely meaningful engagement with community is critical. Obviously, I'm an advocate, and this is, at some point it needs to become, a council. If it becomes a council project, then it would need to be engaged with properly by council.
Yeah, no other questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. John was talking. Yeah, sorry, I didn't bring him up.
Try that result confirmed. There's
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, we're just waiting for.
Oh, thank you.
It's not.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
That's all.
Yeah.
Where's the